Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sue Loncaric, and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sue Loncaric, and it's lovely to have you join me again. Now, we hear a lot about decluttering, and I know last year I certainly had to go through that process again as we moved house. And I still, even though we'd done it before, I still found that I'd accumulated so much stuff that I really tried to minimize as much as I could. But my guest today is Tracy McCubbin from dClutterfly, and she's going to help us with a few tips on how to declutterify our life. She also says that you cannot Marie Kondo your way out of clutter. So we're going to be talking about how we can declutter our life, but also our mindset, and why that can sometimes block our way of trying to declutter every aspect of our life. So if you're having struggles or feeling a little bit overwhelmed with clutter in your mind or physical clutter, then this is the episode for you. So let's go and join the conversation and learn why filling our homes with stuff can make us feel empty. Welcome, Tracy. It is so lovely to have you join me today on another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
Thank you. I think it's a very apropos week to be on this podcast because I'm getting married for the first time at 58. So I think that that's really living well after 50.
Oh, well, that's great. And I'll be asking you that question a little bit later so you can expand on that at the end. But congratulations, and thank you for making the time to chat to me when you've got all these other preparations going on for a very exciting time in your life.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Now, you're an author, amongst things, and you founded dClutterfly. So I wondered if you could just give the listeners a little bit of background about who you are and how you came to this area of decluttering and mindset. And I mean, it's a big area that we can talk about. So, if you can just share a little bit about your story with me.
Sure. So I'm one of those people that spent a good portion of my life figuring out what I didn't want to do. So I had different mini careers, jobs, and everything was like, it just wasn't quite right. It didn't light me up. And I was sort of doing it for money. And, I was chugging along. And then I was a personal assistant for someone. And the way that our work, he was a television director, we would have some downtime. And so because I was a personal assistant, people would call me and say, oh my gosh, my garage is a disaster. Can you help me clean it out? Or my mom passed away and I've got to empty her house. And so I just started doing these jobs. And at first I wasn't even charging. And then I was charging a little. And then my flip phone started blowing up. Like I was just getting call after call after call. And a friend of mine said, I think you have a business. And I was like, wait, no, this is just, I help people. And he's like, yeah, that can be a business, helping people. So I named my company dClutterfly, and we're in our 17th year of being professional declutterers and organizers. We're based in Los Angeles, but I go all over the United States to help people. And at this point right now, I have 10 organizers working for me. And we do everything from senior downsizing to helping people clean out a house after someone's passed, to young moms trying to get a handle on a baby and all the stuff they bring in. And we love it. And I love this business. I love what I do. And then out of the work that I was doing, a component of the story is I'm the child of a hoarder. I have a parent who has extreme hoarding disorder. So I am very familiar with the emotional hold that our stuff has on us. And as I started working with clients, I was like, oh yeah, it's not just hoarding. Like we are so emotionally attached to our stuff in such a way that actually gets in the way of the life we want to be living. So that inspired me to write my first book, Making Space Clutter Free, which came out in 2018, about our emotional, why we can't let go of stuff. And then pandemic was happening. I, was working through the whole pandemic, which was amazing. And I noticed that everybody was shopping more than I'd ever seen it. Like, I don't know about where you are, but like Amazon boxes like piled on the doors. And I just got really drilled down into this idea. Like, we've been talking about decluttering for so long, but we've never been talking about how the clutter gets in the house. We've never been looking at our acquisition cycle. We've never been looking at what's going on with us emotionally that we're looking to shopping for a quick fix. So that inspired me to write the second book, Make Space for Happiness. And it's all about why we shop, why we buy, what we think it's going to fix, and what actually we need to be doing in our lives to get that same feeling as opposed to coming through shopping.
Well, it's actually, did you know that earlier this week it was International Day of Happiness? So that's a good segue there. I agree with you about the shopping and the pandemic. And I mean, everyone was in lockdown. In Australia here, one of our states of Victoria, or Melbourne, the city in particular, was the longest in lockdown out of everywhere in Australia. And, those poor people were just going through hell. And yeah, you see people that were, even people I talked to, buying online because they were bored, or they just, just to sort of think, well, this might make me feel better. And so it certainly is a problem that developed, I was starting to, I think, before the pandemic, but the pandemic just really made it worse.
Absolutely. And, I think that being bored was a huge part of it, but I also think we felt so out of control. We were so scared. And it's like, it's like, okay, well, I can't control what's going on, but if I get a new KitchenAid mixer, then everything will be okay. That we were looking at it. And also all these things, like, we weren't seeing our friends. We weren't connecting with people. We weren't, everything that we knew was taken away, and we all spiraled. And so many of us leaned into shopping. And, and look, I'm not a minimalist. I'm not telling people not to shop, but when it gets out of control, when you are boxes and boxes and you're buying things you don't use and you're returning and you're getting in this cycle, it's not working. And so what I wanted to look at is, what are other ways that you can inspire happiness in you that's not through shopping?
And I don't think people really understand that there's a mindset, or there triggers that make us do those sort of things. And then we are cluttered, and then it becomes overwhelming, because I know that a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, we had to, my mother-in-law moved into an aged care home, and we had to sell her home. Now, she had kept everything, and I'm talking everything, from the time she came to Australia back in 1952 from Italy. And she used to be a plastic bag person. So you'd find things in about 50 plastic bags, and they'd be, or because she wanted to keep them all nice and new, because I suppose her generation went through the Depression, they went through the war, and so everything, she would put down little on her shelves in the refrigerator, she'd have little chucks, we call them, little white things on there so it wouldn't get damaged. Everything looked brand new, but there was so much, all these little ornaments, everything to try and get rid of. And I remember my husband and I just looking at each other and thinking, oh my God, where do we start? And she
well, if I
didn't
was in
use a
Australia,
lot.
yeah, if I was in Australia, you would have called me and I
I
would have.
certainly would have called you. But I think it's the thing that, there's so many little things that also we buy them. And like she had these beautiful display cabinets full of gorgeous little ornaments and crockery and things like that, china. But she never used them because they were for good. So they just sat there.
Well,
and I often, thought to myself, I can tend to be a bit that way myself, but lately I've sort of been thinking, well, what have I got them for? I'm going to use them. I'm pulling out that lovely stuff that, I'm keeping for good, because if good may not happen. So you have to, use what you have and enjoy it.
This is my biggest, especially after the pandemic. I was like, this idea of like, we're saving these things for someday special down the road. And if we learned anything, today is special. Like today, we got up, we had another breath, we saw the sunshine again. Like celebrate that, like put your pizza on the nice plates, burn the fancy candles, wear the pretty blouse. Like, what are you waiting for? I've cleaned out so many houses after people have passed, and they'll have, and they'll be in their 70s, 80s, 90s, and they'll have wedding gifts from when they were married 40 years ago that they never even opened the box. And you think, but for what? Like, you could have been enjoying that. So I am exactly where, use it, and I think that, there was a big, like after World War II and sort of the advent of the middle class, right? That all of a sudden people had money in a different way. And so collecting nice things was a way to show their social status. And so, but I really am seeing this shift, and especially with the younger generation, of like, use your stuff, use it. Like, what are you saving it for? Which I think is great.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm trying to do that more myself. And when we moved house last year, and we'd moved to an apartment, so we had decluttered from a home, and then we were there for about 3 years, and then we've moved to a townhome. And I thought I decluttered when we first moved, but when I was coming back, I thought, gosh, in that 3 years, I've just accumulated more. So we really pared back, and because we just don't have the room anyway. But it's also, I was thinking, I haven't used this. Or I think the other thing, a big thing, is clothing. Everybody buys lots of clothes, but it sits in your wardrobe and you think, why did I buy that? And I haven't even worn it, so it's everywhere, isn't it, in our life, that we sort of tend to
it's everywhere. And I think, especially, as we talked about, I'm 58, and a bulk of my clients are sort of, the call I get most of the time is from women over 50. Like, all of a sudden they're like, I realized I'm the only person who knows where everything is in our house. I'm the only person who knows about the insurance. Like, they're sort of viewing their mortality and like, I've got to get organized so that if something happens to me, or, whatever happens. And then, but also this conversation of like, okay, if you had kids, my kids are grown and out of the house. I'm not hosting the holidays the same way. Like, I just don't need this. Like, I'm really seeing this trend in this age group of like lightening our loads. Like, and I don't need as much. And also, I don't want to leave a mess when I go. I don't want someone else to clean this up. It's, that's such a great reason for people to call me to say like, this house is chock full. My kids aren't going to know what to do with it. Like, I want to take care of this now. So it's great.
Yeah, and I think that's the point too, is because as I said, I've had personal experience of that with my mother-in-law. We had to go through and just empty a whole house. And the other thing was, we sort of offered things to family and to the grandchildren, her grandchildren, that sort of thing. No one wanted it. It wasn't their style, or they didn't have a use for it. And I just felt it was such a waste. because as you, like you said, there were still things in boxes that had never been used. And I also thought, there's a lot of people out there that don't have anywhere near this. They don't have the basic needs. They could have been using
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
so
And that's such a good point that you bring up. And I say this all the time to people, if letting go, if decluttering is difficult for you, if you're sort of like, oh, I might need it or I could use it, oftentimes donating or get rid of the stuff to people who can actually use it makes it easier to let go. Because you're like, I don't want this to end up in the landfill, or I don't want it to just go in a dumpster somewhere. But if this nice young family across the street, they just had a baby and I've got some of my kids' old cribs or, whatever, it's so great. I had a client call me. She had to, like you, very suddenly move her mother into senior living. And she was in California and it was all the way across the country. And she called me up and she was like, I have to do this fast. I'm the only child, she has a house full of furniture. She was just, paralyzed. And I said, look, why don't you go, like, this is where you're from. This is your hometown. Like, why don't you reach out to your family? And she's like, oh, that's so funny. We have a family Facebook group. And I'm like, throw it up there, like, and so she put all the furniture up there. And a second cousin was like, my daughter just got married and they're starting their first home. And, the daughter and the husband and some strapping young gentlemen came over and took like 3/4 of the furniture because they had nothing. And my client was like, this feels so much better than, I don't know, the $1,500 I would have gotten if I sold it at a garage sale. The fact that someone who needs it is using it. And so I think that when you're looking at decluttering, if you can do a little bit more and know that it's getting to the person who needs it, that's going to, it's like, oh, I'm not just throwing this away. Someone can use it. And then all of a sudden you'll start to look around your house, exactly what you said, and say, I have this thing, I'm not using it. Someone could use this. What am I doing? Why am I hanging on to this?
And I think we are becoming hopefully a bit more conscious of the landfill, of just the waste that each household produces. And we just can't keep going on the way we are. So we need to be more discerning in what we buy or not buy, or use things, as we've been talking about. Don't keep things in their boxes, use them. And if you're not going to, give them to someone who will, because there's always someone out there.
Always. I say this all the time. When you throw something away, where's away? Where are you throwing it?
Yeah.
Because I've been to the landfill. I know what it looks like. And I think in having that conversation about, well, where does this, when you buy something, when you buy an item, you become a steward of it, right? You're responsible for it. And all of a sudden, if you start looking at things that you're purchasing and it's like, oh, well, when I don't want this anymore, where's it going to go? Well, maybe I'm not going to buy it because eventually I'm going to have to get rid of it. And I think that we need to, like you said, really draw this through line of like, you buy something, you're going to have to throw it away. Where's away? Where's away?
Yes. Yeah, it's a big issue. And I think actually everyone should go and visit a landfill site, because we did recently, we had to take some things to the waste management area, and I was absolutely, it was an eye-opener for me. And I just immediately said to my husband, we have to do more to be more mindful of what we're doing with things and using them and waste and so forth, because it was just mind-boggling, really.
Mind-boggling. It's just, and that's why, do you have in Australia, do you have buy nothing groups? Have you adopted those yet?
Buy nothing
groups.
I'm not familiar with that, but that's not to say that they're not there. It's just I haven't come across that.
They really came up during the pandemic. Mostly they're on Facebook. Sometimes they're on, like another neighborhood app, but Facebook, they're neighborhood specific, and people put things up on there that they're getting rid of, that they're not selling, they're just giving away. And then people sort of say, I'm looking for.
Yeah, okay, yes, we have, I think that's called Marketplace over here. So some people might...
This is a little different than Marketplace.
Oh, is it?
Marketplace,
okay.
They can sell. These are specifically groups, neighborhood specific.
Oh, yes.
You're not selling anything.
Yes, okay, we do. I think there are some that are buy, swap and sell,
exactly.
So it covers the whole gambit. And they do have community groups. So yes, we do have that. I just wasn't familiar with the term buy nothing.
Yeah, exactly. That buy seller swap is a great one. I got some from a job the other day. They were like, I think we got 15 like really nice brand new from the office supply store 3-inch binders. And I was like, I don't want to throw these like someone, and so my assistant put them up on a buy nothing group, and we had like 2 grad students and a professor say, oh, I can totally use those. And so, it just, you're like, oh, great. With a little extra work, we can find a home for those things.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to, first of all, I loved reading your, bio and so forth. And there was something in there where you said, you're talking about why you cannot Marie Kondo your way out of clutter. And I thought that was a bit of fun, actually, because she became the icon of the decluttering, and everyone started to do the decluttering, and then it sort of fizzled out a little bit, I think.
Well, and I think go ahead.
Go on.
Well, and also in the last couple of weeks after her 3rd child was born, she has recently come out and said, oh my gosh, this is so hard, I've kind of given up. Which
I heard that too.
Yeah,
and
which we all knew she was going to do. We all knew that was going to happen.
But I think that brings me to probably your book, your latest book, The Make Space for Happiness, because she did come up with things. And as I said, everyone got on the bandwagon. We all wanted to do a Marie Kondo, and I actually didn't. But, I sort of got the idea that it might have been a bit hard and very, very strict. And I think it sort of fizzled out, and even now she's come out and said, oh look, it may not be as practical as what I thought. So your book Make Space for Happiness got me thinking, because it's probably more not so much about the physical clutter, or you talk about the 7 clutter magnets, and I truly believe from reading parts of your book and so forth that mindset plays a lot, is important, and there are reasons why probably we get into this cluttering mode or buying everything.
Absolutely. And so in working with clients for so long, I mean, I've decluttered and organized, I don't know, 5,000, some crazy number, but I started to see these through lines, these sort of people over consuming and people buying for the same reasons. I was like, oh, that's what's going on with you. You don't have any connection in your life. So you're trying to find connection by shopping. And this will speak to your audience. So many of the women that I work with they're just overbuying beauty products and anything that says anti-aging, and sort of and aging's not for the faint of heart, and it is a blow to your self-confidence, and your body changes and your face changes, but all of a sudden you're trying to magnetize that confidence through an eye cream. It's like, well, that's not going to help you, and we're being marketed to all the time, or we're trying to, access free time. So we buy all these gadgets to save us time, or, the other one. And I see this, if you grandparents are out there, you got to listen, perk your ears up, because, just overbuying gifts for your grandkids or your kids to get their love. And it's like, they just want to see you. They just want to see you. And so I was seeing these 7 sort of familiar themes that were running through everybody. And that's where I got this idea of like, oh, here are these magnets. Here are this hole that we think was missing. We think we have a hole inside of us. And so we're trying to fill it with stuff, but the stuff doesn't fill it. So what I want you to do is stop the buying for a bit for now and look at what's really missing. I had an appointment with this woman recently, husband and wife, and they were in their 70s. And pandemic had been very hard. And she self-professed was like, I have been shopping like a drunken sailor. Like, I am shopping. And we started talking, and I said, well, tell me, what the pandemic was like. And, she said, well, I retired from my job of 35 years, which was a very social job right before the pandemic. We stopped going to church in person, so I wasn't even seeing that. And I stopped playing bridge. And I was like, well, no wonder you're shopping. Like, your 3 big human connections were taken away. Like, of course, and so understanding what's missing and how can you fulfill that without the shopping.
Yeah, and also I think that I think the area of clothes, because women, well, I won't just say women, but in particular we do, we want to look good. But I think there's an issue I've found in going from a career and retiring, and you're going to a different lifestyle. You don't need the career clothes anymore. So then you're not really sure what your style is. So you're just buying and buying and buying and hoping that something will come together. Then you end up with a wardrobe full of clothes and you think, I hate every piece in here. Why did I buy it?
Uh-huh.
So, I think that's, when we have major changes in our life as well, such as changing career or going from a career to retirement,
Or how
it's
about
hard to adjust.
also, how about just gravity? Gravity changes your
Oh,
body,
yeah, yeah, that's
like
a good
it's
point.
just like all of a sudden I can't, I can't wear things I used to be able to wear. My body's changed. And that's, and we sort of, I'll see this all the time. People keeping clothes from like a past life, either a work clothes or clothes they used to be able to fit into it. It's like, I'm going to get back into that. And I'm like, but all you're doing is looking backwards. You're trying to
Mm,
get somewhere you already were. Why don't you
mm,
look forward and
mm.
wear the clothes that you feel comfortable in now or look good on you now?
Yes.
Why are you so focused on what already happened and dressing for that part? Why don't you look forward and say, like, this is where I'm going, and you know what, I don't have to go to an office every day anymore, so I get to wear softy pants and a cute sweater. Like
Mm.
I'm very much about making sure that the stuff that is in your house isn't causing you to look backwards, but it's causing you to look forward. It's
Oh,
supporting
I
the
like
life you're
that.
living today.
Mm, mm. Which again ties in what we were talking about, holding on to things that we've never used, and in that case, you're looking forward in too far ahead, because you're saying, or you're waiting. You're
Yeah.
not looking forward and doing, you're looking forward and waiting for that moment. And then that moment may come and go and you've missed the opportunity. So I really believe mindset and the way we look at things is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And then understanding in that idea, if how does your home, how does your stuff and your relationship to your stuff support you in the direction that you're heading, right? How does
Mm,
it support you? I worked with this woman who was, I talk about this in the first book, was a ballerina, very, prominent ballerina. And she's in her 70s now. And her apartment in New York City was just, it was a museum to her past life. It was just full of pictures at her prime and posters and all that. And she found herself not wanting to go. She had a little beach house and she was like spending less and less time in the city. And her daughter brought me in and we started to talk about it. And she was like, every time I go back there, it feels like a mausoleum or like, and I was like, well, why don't we just get rid of all this stuff, or gave some stuff to her kids so they could remember, and got rid of like 3/4 of that and had one or two beautiful posters of that. And all of a sudden she's like, oh, like full of life, and started volunteering and teaching dance to young kids and was able to engage again, because she was like, here's where I am in my life. I'm 70 something. I still have all this amazing stuff to offer. So let me lean into that as opposed to looking back to what I was. Mm.
yeah, and I want to bring up that because as you were talking, I just wrote down letting go, because it's sometimes hard to, what do you do with the millions of photos that you've taken over the years that you never look at? And, that's just one thing, but
That's a huge thing. Yeah.
all those personal things, the cards that you've been given, and maybe, like me, I'm a mum, and I've got grandchildren as well. And, you've got the little handwritten cards that they've given you or made, and, you've got cards from friends or something with beautiful words in them. And, oh, well, I'm 66 this year. So if I kept everything, I'd have a house full of gift cards. So, how do you overcome that letting go of the personal things? I'm not talking about furniture, but it's those little things that you sort of think, oh gosh, I can't throw that away. That's a photo of such and such, or I can't throw that away. You know, my daughter gave me that when she was in grade 1 or something, and she's now 42. You know, what do you advise people? How do you get over that obstacle of actually letting go? Because I know that once you do, you feel freedom, but it's that stumbling block of, I shouldn't really get rid of this. I feel bad if I do, but I don't look at it.
Yeah, that's such a great, it's so great. And look, I'm not saying to come in and scrub your life and get rid of all the memories, but I can promise you, because I've been doing this for 17 years, that if you pulled out, let's say you have, a couple bins of your kids, your now grown kids' artwork, you're going to go through it and you're going to be like, okay, well, this one wasn't even signed, so I don't know which kid did this. This one was like, this kid actually wasn't a very good artist. Like, you can always declutter a bunch that actually isn't as important, because I would say if you keep everything because everything is special, then nothing's special. Like, if you're overwhelming keeping all these memories. So I always invite people, like, go through and, each kid gets a box and you keep the best of the best, and the first self-portrait that they drew, and, the first card your grandkid. And then it's going to be this reasonable amount of things that are very, truly special. And trust me, you'll go through cards and you'll be like, I think this is from my dentist. Like, I don't, we sort of, when we're starting to save a whole bunch of it, there's a lot that gets in there that really, truly isn't memories. So it's about kind of creating a way to save it and to honor it. That's the other thing. If you have memories sort of shoved in drawers all over the place and cabinets and things, you're not honoring it. There's a leak in there and everything's ruined. It's like getting one nice box for each kid and putting the best of the best. And then at some point you're like, here's your memories, you can pass it on to them. So in the curating process, you really figure out what is special.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you made about, if you treat everything as special, then nothing's special. So, and at the moment we're having the local council has what they call a cleanup. So you can put out all the stuff that you don't want on the footpath. And oh my God, the footpaths are just piled high at the moment with things. And of course, some people will go around scavenging and taking what they think. But even my grandsons came home from school and their dad had been through, and they're quite good on trying not to keep things. They live in a small house and they make sure that they don't over clutter and things like that, but you can't help it with a family. And they had all this stuff out on there that the kids weren't using, but it wasn't good enough to give away. It was just, they'd used it, and some of the things had been given to them from other kids using. And my oldest grandson said, oh, Dad's throwing that out, we can't do that. And I said, leave it. You can. When did you use it? I said, you're nearly 9 years old. You're not going to be using something that you did when you were 5. So, they sort of, even at a young age, they get that attachment to something. And then they find that it's difficult to let go.
Of course. And it's a memory. And, this is one of my favorite stories. I have this family I've worked with for years, and I watched their son. I mean, he's 17 now. I think he was going into kindergarten when I first started working with them. And we were going through the books. He was a big reader and he was on to chapter books, so we were cleaning out all the books, and he was doing great, like the board books and the simple picture books, letting go. And then I'm sure you have it in Australia, but there's that kid's book called Pat the Bunny that's got the fuzzy little bunny. And it's, and I held that up when he was like, oh, that was my favorite. I just can't look. And he sort of like tried to, and I was like, look, keep some, like keep your, keep a few of your favorite.
Yeah. I think in that sense, it's nice for them to keep that one, because that obviously really meant something to him.
And you can see the difference. He had a different reaction. It wasn't just like, oh, this, mine. He was like, that was my favorite. Like, he remembered it. Also, I have something that I have created. I call it the grandma box. You can call it the grandparents box. Like, as your kid, if you're like a young mom, or, your kids are middle school or teenage years, as you're sort of going through it, you can make a box of their most favorite toys so that when they have, if and when they have kids, you can give it. My favorite thing when I went to my grandparents' house, my favorite thing, they had a chest, a toy chest, and they had a handful, a dozen or so of my mom's toys. And I loved playing with them. They didn't have a whole room. They didn't have a whole attic. They had one chest and I played with it for years. So if your kids are growing out of it and it's their most special stuff, make a grandma box, save it, keep it safe. And then when you have grandkids, they can play with it. So it's about being, you know, we keep talking about mindset here, but it's also about being mindful. What are you keeping and why? What to what end? What purpose does this serve? Why are you keeping it? And when you start to be mindful about your choices, instead of just, I paid good money for it, or the kids used to play with it, then all of a sudden you're in conversation with yourself about what to let go of.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Just sort of reflecting and just taking a moment about an object or whatever, and really, you know, thinking, as you said, being more mindful about that. So we are sort of coming along in our interview, and I'm enjoying the conversation, and sometimes I can tend to just talk forever. But I wanted to just see, as we're sort of getting towards the end, before I forget, what do you know, like, what are, say, 3 tips you could give someone today if they just want to start? Now, obviously, you're a professional, and they can always reach out to you, especially if they're in the States. But, you know, just say someone's listening today and they think, oh, I'm really feeling overwhelmed. I just want to do something. What are some small steps you can start with? Say three of your top tips.
Perfect. So one of the first ones, and I do these on Instagram. I do these 5-minute decluttering challenges. So I put up something that you can declutter in 5 minutes. It is such a great starting place for people. My Instagram's at Tracy_McCubbin. And it's everything from bras to coffee mugs to pens. It's just something that you can attack and get done. And if you're in overwhelm, don't start with your whole house. Don't start with the photos. These little bite-sized decluttering nuggets. And I get DMs all the time of people who have, like, I followed the whole series and all of a sudden my whole house is done. So it's just really doable, really, you'll build on your success. So that's a great way, these small little 5-minute decluttering challenges. This is a really good one. This is you'll love this because this is a mindset switch. So the next time you're thinking about shopping and you say to yourself, oh, I really need a new pair of black jeans. I need a new pair of black jeans. Stop saying I need, because I'm going to guarantee you have black jeans. Start saying I want a new pair of black jeans. I want a new sweater. When you swap that language and stop saying you need it and just saying you want it, sometimes the want just goes away. You're like, oh, actually, I didn't really want it. Or if it sticks around, it's a good investment. So just stop. You don't need as much as you're telling yourself that you need. So that's
go on.
That's just a really good language switch that'll make a difference starting today.
Yeah. And just before you give me your next point, just with that shopping, sometimes if you put it in the wish list and then go away, or put it in the cart and go away, I know I do it myself. I'll think, oh yeah, I'm going to get this and this and this, and I'll put them in there. And then I don't know, something stops me from checking out. And then I find that half an hour later or the next day or whatever, I'll go back and I think, oh, you know what, I really don't think I'll get those. And so it stops that impulse buying of just, oh, I like that, put it in, because it's so easy online to do that.
Oh yeah.
And,
well, and you gave that's my third easy start tip.
Sorry.
No, this is great. I love it. You already put it in practice. So I tell people, for every $50 an item costs, wait 24 hours before you buy it. So if it costs $100, then you wait 48 hours, and on and on and on. And you will find, as you said, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't really want that. Oh, I even forgot about that, because we're being marketed to all the time. right? The ads are coming at us, in the old days. I'm sure this was the same in Australia. We only had a couple TV channels and you knew when the commercials were and that was it. Now it's like Instagram, Facebook, online ads. All of a sudden you're just like, oh, I got to buy. So it's about being, putting some systems into place to help you get through the impulse buying.
Because I think that's a major point. Now I'm going to put the links to everything in the show notes, so that'll be the link to your Instagram. And I love the idea of that 5-minute declutter challenge. I'm going to be going and having a look at that as soon as we finish the interview, because you're right, 5 minutes is nothing. You can set that aside, and then I think what would happen from that is you would do it, and then you'd feel that sense of achievement, and you'd probably think, oh, okay, well, where's another 5 minutes I can try? And from what I gather, you've got quite a few on there. So everyone just go to Tracy's Instagram account and let's all do the 5-minute challenges, because I think that's a fabulous idea.
And it really is. And again, to go back to this idea of mindset too, that when you're successful with one category, then you move on to the next one and you're building on your success. And then all of a sudden you're doing all these silly little things that seem silly, like, hair ties and coffee mugs and, all that. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm ready to tackle the tough one. I'm ready to tackle photos. Like you kind of build a muscle. Don't start with photos, people. I'm just saying it's okay. Don't start with photos.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. No, that is my takeaway point. But, let's do the 5-minute challenges. So it has been so lovely chatting to you today, Tracy. And as I said, I'll be putting up all the links to your books and your blog and your website. And for those in the States, they'll be able to call you up to physically come and help them. I mean, you can always fly over to Australia, I suppose, and give some help.
I'm waiting for it. If somebody I've been waiting and waiting. So I have quite a few Australian followers, which has been so fun interacting. It's just been great. I feel like if I got over there, I'd be lots of people.
Yeah, well, I think that you would have to come over and do some workshops maybe. And then that way people will be able to come and see you. But before we finish today, and you did sort of start a little bit at the beginning on this, but I always ask a question to all of my guests, and that's, what does being a woman living well after 50 mean to you? And I wondered if you could give me your thoughts on that question.
I love this question because I feel like for me, I've had a great, my life was great and lots of fun and traveled, but I just feel like every decade I know myself better. I'm clearer on my vision. I'm clearer with my boundaries, and being clear with my boundaries mean that I can help more people. It's just 40 was fantastic. 50's been amazing. Like I said, my business blew up. I wrote 2 books in my 50s. I'm getting married in my 50s. Like, I think that this BS, I'm not going to say the bad word, like life is over for women at 50 is ridiculous, because every woman I know in her 50s is on fire. And I know a bunch of 60-year-olds that are just like, and 70. So I think that we get to this place where we know ourselves so well. We know what we'll put up with and what we won't. And with that clarity, it makes us be able to be of service to others without draining ourselves. So I love it.
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. Well, as I said, thank you for joining me. I wish you all the best for your wedding this weekend. And,
thank you.
That's very exciting. And I agree. I mean, I'm in my 60s now, and I've done a personal training course in my 60s, and I've run 3 marathons in my 60s. I've started a podcast in my 60s. Everything happened in the 60s, but it all started from developing in my 50s, when, you start to be more comfortable with who you are as a person. And, we always have our days where our self-confidence isn't there, but I think you do become stronger within yourself and your self-belief. And when you see other women in your demographic doing things, that inspires you as well. And you've been very inspiring today, because You know, we all know about decluttering. We know what we shouldn't do, but I love your attitude and the way that it's more than just getting rid of the physical stuff. We need to be mindful. We need that mindset to be right, to be able to let go and to appreciate the things that we do have. So I really love the message that you've come with us today, and I encourage everyone to read your books as well, because making space for happiness, or make space for happiness, is really what we want in life, isn't it?
It is. And that, I'm just to put a button on it, my whole conversation, my whole life's work, it's not about having a perfect home. I don't care what your home looks like. I want your home to work for you. I want your home to support you. I want your home to support what you want to be doing with yourself. I want your home to make you feel good. That's what's important. How it looks, we'll get there if it is, but if you are living in a cluttered home, it's sucking energy from you. And I want you to live in a home that supports you. That is my whole goal.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful point to finish on. So thank you again for joining me, Tracy. It's been wonderful to chat to you, and good luck with everything. And we're all going off now to do that 5-minute challenge.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Tracy. Well, that was a great conversation with Tracy McCubbin from dClutterfly. And it's not all about just getting rid of the physical. It's about the mindset, being mindful, having a home that works for you, that supports you, and just making space for happiness. I'm going to try the 5-minute challenges on her Instagram account. So remember to look in the show notes, because all the links will be there. So I hope that you've enjoyed the episode this week. It's been good to talk about decluttering and to find happiness in life. And if you've enjoyed the episode, I'd love you to share it with a friend who may benefit from listening to the conversation as well. Give me a like and also leave me a comment, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. So that's it for this week. Have a fabulous week, and until next time, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.